there's a possibility that the central bank in Malaysia would actually want to maintain the current OPR at 3%.
What sort of state level push that needs to be done to ensure that we actually sustain this growth?
Because before one can actually save, they need to earn some money.
100 projects within 10 years, you think it's quite easy, right?
Then it will create more high-paying jobs for the locals.
Hello everybody and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. My name is Amalina Kamal and today we will be discussing the Employees Provident Fund and Amanah Saham Bumiputra's strong dividends that are expected to be declared this quarter, driven by improved equity market performance and stable interest rates. Now, EPF's gross investment income grew by 20% compared to the previous year, setting the stage for a notable dividend. ASB, closely tied to local equity markets, also benefits from the positive market trends and stable returns due to the unchanged overnight policy rate. Now, separately, we will also be covering the launch of the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, also known as JSSEZ. Now, Malaysia's Economy Minister Rafizi Ramli highlighted the zone's potential ability to manage geopolitical risks and its appeal to global companies. Both Malaysia and Singapore will provide infrastructure and financial support, with Malaysia offering tax incentives for new investments. Public transport upgrades in Johor are also being considered to accommodate the expected growth. Now here we have Bank Muamalat's Chief Economist, Dr. Muhammad Afzanizam Abdul Rashid, to share his insights.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Afzanizam, for joining us on this particular episode of Beyond the Headlines. Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too.
I hope it was a very good celebration for you. Of course, 2025, we're looking forward to a lot of updates, a lot of developments, particularly on the economic side. But I think what a lot of people are looking at is in this particular quarter, so EPF is going to provide its updates on the dividend, right? Leading up to that, right, given the current positive market performance that EPF personally had, shared with our readers, how sustainable do you think the commendable dividends declared by EPF and ASB will be in the long term if this year's percentage is, positive?
Sure. Well, I think the questions on sustainability is very much dependent on the prevailing market conditions. I think last year we had a very good year economically, despite all the challenges from abroad. If you look at our FBMK LCI, it has actually risen by 12.9%. Our ringgit was the best performing currencies within the emerging market space. So on that note, I think EPF investment strategy is paying off well, be it investing in the domestic markets and also investing in the global markets. So we had that situation in 2024. But in 2025, I think the investment climates, it's quite challenging. One thing's for sure is the incoming president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We know that his policies would be quite controversial. Things like tariff and further, aggravates the trade protectionist policies in the global economic condition. That could actually have a direct impact on the financial markets. Already we have seen in early January that the equities markets are really in a very volatile mode. So that goes to show the sustainability issues is very much dependent on the prevailing market conditions, which I think very much some of them are outside from the government control. But whatever it is, the disciplines, the experience by the EPF investment team, I think we can, safely say that we are in good hands because there are quite a number of them in terms of their experience very well in terms of managing our funds. And it has proven in the past that EPF has actually was able to deliver commendable dividend rates despite the volatility in the financial markets.
Understood. And I suppose this also translates across for external factors such as the risk in Europe as well as China, I suppose.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. But I do want to ask you this, since we're on this topic, how would ASEAN impact the percentage of our EPF and ASB sort of a performance here?
Well, I think EPF asset allocations is pretty much heavily invested in Malaysia. I think circa slightly more than 60% thereabouts. I think because of that diversification strategy, where some of them are being invested mostly in Malaysia and some of them invested in overseas markets, that sort of provides some cushion to any volatility in the markets. And I think this is quite standard across the board in terms of how the institutional investors craft their investment strategy, whereby they would actually diversify their investment exposures in various geographical locations, not just mostly in Malaysia. Because in investments, in portfolio investments, diversification matters, because that would actually minimize the impact and also the risk of the investments. But again, when we talk about investment, it's always some degree of uncertainties, and this is where investment or EPF investment strategy in terms of allocating their asset class also matters, because they are not investing in one particular instruments. They will invest in.
Yeah. Correct. Maybe you can just quickly explain a little bit about the variations here, because we want to stress on the diversification strategies that EPF as well as ASB has pushed for.
I think the bulk of it is fixed income, which is the bond markets, which principally revolves around the Malaysian government securities and also the corporate bonds markets. And these fixed income portions, their purpose is to ensure a capital preservation by the EPFs, but at the same time offering a stable kind of returns to EPF. So we have this bulk of it. I think I need to check how much. I can't really remember on top of my head, but that accounts quite a sizable share, the fixed income portions. The other one is, of course, the equities investment in the stock markets. This is where the excitement really gets in terms of how it can deliver respectable returns to EPF. And at the same time, they need to also be sure about the kind of risk that they're taking in, because of this. The nature of equity investment is always volatile, but at the same time, they have given a very much high degree of sources of investment returns. So these are the major asset class by the EPF, which essentially will help them to be able to generate sustainable returns for the EPF members.
Okay. Can we talk about the steady OPR sort of rate here at 3%, right? How do you, 3% throughout 2024, what will be the potential impact for dividends if there were changes in the interest rate for this coming year?
Well, I guess, yes, OPR matters because it will affect market sentiments, it will affect interest income for the fixed income portions, things like I mentioned earlier on, the bond markets and also the money market as well. So it depends on which direction. But now I think globally we are seeing interest rates are on the declining trend. So of course the main question now is whether our Bank Negara would follow suit in terms of the trend. But now I think if you look at our the economic trajectory, I think central bank is always placed a very close attention towards the risk associated with inflation, and the government has actually projecting inflation rate of around 2% to 3.5% in 2025. So that goes to show perhaps Bank Negara might be, be prudent in managing their monetary policies. So what I'm saying is that there's a possibility that the central bank in Malaysia would actually want to maintain the current OPR at 3% because of the current economic conditions that we are in now at the moment.
Okay, so there is a strive for that. That's what you predict, at least here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I want to get your take on, do you think whether or not, the account 3 that EPF has introduced had, impacted the portfolios at B here? What do you think there will be the prospects for 2025?
Right. I think EPF will always observe the cash flow in their coffers, and they would make necessary adjustment in accordance to the asset and liability. And of course, they will time this, they will plan this, and I think this is something that is not unusual for them. Obviously, they have experienced something that is quite something that's quite unconventional during COVID-19, whereby there was a massive withdrawals, right, during COVID-19, 145 billion. Despite that, they were able to maintain reasonable dividend rates, be able to maintain a reasonable level of liquidity in the system. So I think they have experienced that. So I think the account 3 is something that is planned. So I think they have actually I suppose they have imputed what are the possible risks associated with the account 3 withdrawals. But in general, I think it shouldn't be affecting them too much, because if you look at the share of account 3, it's still at a very minimal level at the moment.
Thank you. I do still have questions on EPF and ASB here. I mean, because as you know, like for 2023, EPF declared dividends of 5.5% for simpanan konvensional and 5.4% for simpanan syariah, with a total payout of, I think, more than 57 billion ringgit here, while ASB, on the other hand, distributed a total of 5.25 cent per unit, outperforming fixed deposit rates. This is for 2023. Do you see that trajectory growing or maintaining itself for the next year?
Next year, you mean this year, is it?
This year lah.
Right. I think if you look at the first 9 months performance by EPF, they have indicated that the gross investment income has risen by 20% compared to the same period in 2023. So 20% increase in gross investment income in the first 9 months, that should give you a fairly good idea what sort of dividend rates going to be like for 2024, which will be announced, as you said, in March this year. So my sense is that at least we should be getting same rates as in the past, in 2023, if not more. But I think there's a chance that it might be better compared to the previous dividend rates, as what been saying in the dividend rates for ASB. I think it's that, although they are not in the same cohort in the sense they are asset allocations, but it should give you a sense that if ASB can give higher dividend rates, I think EPF should be able to do the same as well for last year's dividend.
All right. And the only reason why I'm asking is that there is this public sentiment that, the trust or the believability towards EPF is declining. Do you see that trend though?
I don't think so. I think EPF has done quite well in terms of their investments, and they have been forthcoming in sharing the informations. Every quarter, we'll be getting updates from them, what sort of performance that they are been projecting to the society. And of course, at the same time, they remain cognizant about the needs of its members. I think the most recent announcement was made, of course, in relation to the country. It's also about how to retain a comfortable amount of retirement funds when you retire, when they announce the retirement income adequacy RIA framework. That sort of give you or the members what sort of trajectory for them in order to achieve a better life when they retire with their EPF funds. So they are quite cognizant about the needs of their members.
Since we're talking about this, I suppose growing or sustaining the retirement saving pool here, right? The policies or the initiatives that you believe are crucial to ensure that the benchmark for Malaysians is raised, what do you think is missing, and what sort of changes that we need to gear towards to strengthen the resilience and growth of the retirement savings schemes within EPF and ASB itself, especially?
Sure, I think you need to look from a bigger picture standpoint. I mean, EPF is one of the factors that will help our societies to achieve a comfortable retirement funds, and through their mandates, they have done that. they have done that, just that lah, in terms of delivering what is needed from EPF. But the other factor that we need to understand or need to appreciate, obviously, is the level of salaries and wages. Yeah, because before one can actually save, they need to earn some money, and that income has to be at a respectable level lah, in order for them to to make that savings. So then we are talking about the labor markets. Then we would talk about the industries in the economy that are more vibrant. That would then perhaps we talk about the level of educations, the talent pool that will be aligned to towards what has been needed by the industries. So there are many or various parts of the economy that requires attention, which ultimately will result in perhaps better pay at some point, which would allow the workers and the EPF members to have more savings when they retire. So it's an ecosystem actually, if you look at it.
Understood. And on that note, because Malaysia's growth is set to sustain last year's pace, which is 2025's pace, and exceeds like 5% for this year, 2025. At least this is what our second finance minister, Amir Hamzah Azizan, had actually announced, right? The country is already on a positive track, with government likely beating last year's deficit target of 4.3%. Okay. This is on a national level, but what sort of state level push that needs to be done to ensure that we actually sustain this growth? With going away a bit from the topic of EPF, but this is in general.
Okay, if you notice, every states would have their own economic plans as well. I think the most recent one is the announcements of the signing of agreements of Johor-Singapore special economic zones. That would have a broader impact to the Johor economy, obviously, and perhaps on the broader picture, perhaps that would inculcate a better relationship between Malaysia and Singapore. And if you look at in Sarawak, we can see a lot of actions has been going on there. And I think the Sarawak government is going for further autonomy in its economic management, and perhaps there will be a spillover effects to its own domestic economy. And if you look at the East Coast states like Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang, one of the key areas that they want to focus on, obviously, is the blue economy that revolves around fishery, tourism, oil and gas. So if you notice, each states or regions would have their own niche that they're trying to focus on, and with the right policies, perhaps the spillover effect will translate into more jobs, better income. So it's a concerted effort, and it requires a better coordinations between the federal governments, the state governments, and also the local authorities.
Understood. It's interesting that you mentioned about the Johor-Singapore economic zone here, or in short, they have branded it as JSSEZ, right? For this, that particular zone, it actually covers more than 3,000 hectares in key areas like Iskandar Development Region, Forest City, Pengerang, as well as Desaru. And in this particular announcement, it was done when the recent Prime Minister for Singapore actually came over and visited Malaysia. For the economic impact itself, how would you assess the potential JSSEZ trade activities here in improving the bilateral relations between us as well as Singapore?
But I think if you look at the two economies, there are some degrees of differentiations, obviously. Singapore is a city state, and yes, they are advanced economy. They are very advanced in many respects, but they are lack in terms of resources, in terms of the land mass. We in Malaysia, on the other hand, we have that land mass, we have that resources, and we have competitive level of electricity supplies, water supplies, which are also an important feature for any economic zones. And by having this SEZ, special economic zones, it would make economic developments more targeted. And as mentioned, I think in JSEZ, there are certain key sectors that would be the main focus, like advanced manufacturing, E&E, pharmaceuticals and whatnot. So with the preferential treatments perhaps that will attract more FDIs, and more Singaporean companies will be set up in this area. Then it will create more high-paying jobs for the locals. So from this SEZ, perhaps it will have a spillover effects to the adjacent areas within Johor, and perhaps it will go into other states in Malaysia as well.
Right, in the neighboring states then. Okay, but then, okay, we talk about FDIs, but because we're talking about how to encourage the domestic sort of investment or the domestic buy-in here. So what sort of prioritization must be pushed for sectorially first? If we were looking at getting everybody within, I suppose, the country to go for, or at least uphold the JSSEZ here.
But when we talk about investment, it's always about felicitations. Yeah, when you want to facilitate investments, obviously time really matters, and dealing with governments, this is the main challenges actually. I mean, especially in Malaysia, we have three types of governments. We have federal, we have state, we have local authorities, and each of these jurisdiction we have their own rules and regulations. So in order to perhaps to expedite this, obviously there must be certain better coordinating efforts so that any investment approvals can be done swiftly. So I think regulatory challenges would be the main priority in order to allow this investment to grow more seamlessly, I would say. So I think the regulatory side will be the main challenges now.
With that, right, what do you think are some of the key challenges that probably the government, or at least the state government, would see in overseeing, or at least fulfilling these 100 projects within 10 years? 100 projects within 10 years, you think it's quite easy, right? So that's 10 projects per year, but that's quite a handful. So I suppose the immediate push first.
Okay. As it is now, we have been getting an inflow of investments, and the likes of data centers from various reputable companies in Malaysia, and then some of them are located in the southern region already. So I think that's momentum being built already in that particular zone. So what it means is that perhaps, like I said, better facilitation. And I think they have created Invest Malaysia to focus on this area, so that any application for investment would be read through in a manner that is more efficient, and to crystallize this investment in almost immediately. So it's about timing, it's about regulation, it's about procedures, but at the same time creating balance. Because what is more important is how it will translate into the benefits to the average Malaysians. Yeah, I think that is more important, and we know we have available talent pool in Malaysia, and how this available talent pool can be absorbed within this SEZ. So I think while we want to promote investment in a manner that is more efficient, but at the same time we want to ensure that the benefits will actually wide-ranging for the locals. That is more important, I would say. Yeah.
Understood. And this projects actually scope across, aerospace, electronics, medical devices, and energy transition. This is, at least for our audience who are not in the know yet, in terms of how it can, encourage our talent pool to thrive in that sense. Okay, so I've mentioned about all these sectors, right? Are these industries well positioned for growth within this region, at least, in your opinion?
Well, I think we have a good start. Obviously, I think if you look at the journey towards sustainable energy is there through policies intervention like NETR. Because if you talk about data centers, the demand for electricity is likely to be higher. The demand for water supplies will be higher, and these are precious resources, and it has to be done in a more sustainable manner that will result in lower emission of greenhouse gas emissions, so to speak. So
Carbon zero, yeah.
Right. So the carbon zero initiative, we have acknowledged that, we have executed that. I think if you look at Tenaga Nasional, for instance, the share of or the energy mix from solar is growing. So because what matters is to grow sustainably, and we have done that through by the previous policies.
Okay, so but how can we reflect this in the, I suppose, tax incentive then? I guess because we need the buy-in from the people to enjoy, I mean, to support this sort of sustainability lifestyle, right? So when it comes to green energy, there is always a disconnect here when it comes to the apa kata, reward system, or at least encouraging people to adopt such push or such lifestyle, right? Do you think this is an area where the government should look into, at least proposing certain tax incentives that are green friendly as well, apart from, you know, boosting the economy?
I think that the incentives has been given. For instance, if you talk about electric vehicles, like they have been given incentive like road tax exemptions for a number of years, and as it is now, we can see the registered vehicles for EV has gone up quite substantially. I think in the first 11 months, 19,000 of EV registered vehicles have been registered with JPJ. That's quite a strong numbers lah for EVs, because of the perhaps of the tax incentives, and I think this incentive will need to be perhaps to be prolonged in order, like you said, to encourage more buy-ins within these particular areas. But well, I guess it's a journey lah, Amarina. If you talk about net energy metering, NEM 3.0, we can see because NEM 3.0 has been given up from which runs from 2021 until 2025. So we can see there's still excess capacity that has not been applied by the Malaysian citizens. So I think there's buy-in. I think it will take some time, because I think to transition towards renewable energies or sustainable energies, it costs money as well, and it's not cheap.
And exactly, because the reality is that we just spoke about how the wage or the progressive wage salary, or the whole context of that would be the key factor or indicator in indicating whether we've achieved success or not. And then we were talking about retirement, and then now we're talking about how we can be sustainably when it comes to energy. But there seems to be a disconnect there, right? So how can we push?
It's not, to me, it's not the disconnectivity. It's about the journey. It will take some time. For instance, we talk about greenhouse energy emission and whatnot. I think we need to acknowledge the fact that the climate risk is real. We are seeing the symptoms already. The weather is very erratic, right? Things like flash floods, drought seasons and whatnot. It's going to affect the economy almost systematically, and this needs to be managed. And through managing the carbon emissions is the way to go. It is proven by science. So it will take some time for us to understand. If not, then this climate risk will continue to happen, and it will continue to affect our livelihood. I think the shocks are very real, actually. It's just that we want to see the outcome. And also, we talk about sustainable or renewable energy. It has to be a joint effort, not just for Malaysia. It has to be region-wide and also at a global stage. Because ultimately, we want to reduce our carbon emission and perhaps be able to reduce the temperature, and hopefully we can reverse all these so-called calamities lah. So it is a journey lah, Marina. And
I understand.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how state-driven initiatives, like for instance in Sarawak, they've actually adopted, or at least they see this I suppose long-term drive here to ensure that the economy can prosper well according to the time and the climate, like literally, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Going back to the JS and SEZ here. What other sort of like proposed tax incentive would be attractive enough to to offer to gain high value investments here?
Well, the common policies, obviously, the reduction in corporate income tax, the reductions in personal income tax to attract talent. So these are the common fiscal incentives to attract investment within the SEZ. But I think beyond tax incentive, it's about the ecosystem. It's about how the regulatory environment would actually can support the private investors to come and invest in these particular areas. So it will take some time. If you look at Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, it was started in early in the 80s. It will take some time to actually realize certain the benefits of SEZ there. So again, it's a marathon, Amalina.
Yeah, I understand. But my question is because I just want to see how we can differentiate ourselves or stand out from other economic zones, right, in the region. What sort of attraction can we push for to at least gives that sort of variety that's needed within the region? And factoring in the fact that like Malaysia is chairing ASEAN summit this year.
Yeah.
Next year will be our tourism visit Malaysia year, right? So
right. Well, I think if you want to talk about Malaysia, how we can stand out. For me, the number one selling point for Malaysia is a peaceful country, right? And we are diversified, well diversified in terms of culture. And I think most of our citizens are English conversant, and that will actually help to facilitate investments, because investment not just about regulatory, not just about incentives, but it's a long term. So we need that to have that ecosystem works well for them to be here for a longer period, and to have that multiplier effect to be crystallized now. So yeah, I think we can stand out from the rest of the pack, Amalina. I mean, last year we have proven ourselves. We talk about our currencies, right? Since 2018, our ringgit has been quite in the doldrum, but last year we managed to eke out, the best performing currencies in the emerging markets. And who would know that, before this? But we were able to do that, and mostly I think because of the perhaps we have sort of achieved political stability, and because of stability that would allow a more clear or clarity in policy making and policy executions. So yeah.
right. And I suppose on some levels, our optimistic view to restore our fiscal health has actually helped to push Malaysia
True.
rating.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think last year there's a slew of fiscal consolidation exercise. They actually revised the some of tax rates, the e-invoicing, the diesel subsidy rationalizations. The government managed to pull that off, and it's not easy, especially when
It's not easy with given the fact that our political climate is as such that
right.
it's very colorful, right?
Right, it's unpopular moves, but the government managed to do that. But they do it in a very measured pace, lah. So I think that's among the reason why the foreign investors are really start to look at our economy in a more serious note, lah. As being reflected in our ringgit, reflected in our KLCI, and certain months you can see there were inflows of funds from abroad in the equities market, in the bond markets. So these are the telltale signs that shows that I think we did something right last year, and if we can continue to do that, and perhaps the momentum can be built upon further in 2025 and beyond.
Yes, on that note, rest assured the government, I believe, plans to narrow the gap further to 3.8% of GDP this year. And I think the country is already on a positive track for that. And with that, thank you so much, Dr. Afzal Nizam, for joining us on this call. Again, Happy New Year to you and to our audience back at home. Thank you so much for joining us on this.
Most welcome.
Now, over the past week, the nation has been captivated by the unfolding controversy surrounding Datuk Seri Najib Razak's legal proceedings, specifically the alleged existence of a royal addendum that could have allowed him to serve his sentence under house arrest. Now, this development gained significant attention after the Court of Appeal's recent decision permitting Najib to contest the existence of the addendum, sparking intense debate and speculation across the political spectrum. On January 6, Najib's lawyer Tan Sri Muhammad Shafi Abdullah produced a letter from the Pahang Sultanate Council confirming the alleged addendum, which is now part of Najib's appeal efforts. Now, Najib's original 12-year prison sentence and 210 million ringgit fine were reduced to 6 years and 50 million ringgit after a royal pardon. Now, the opposition has seized this opportunity to accuse the government of concealing the purported addendum, suggesting a deliberate attempt to withhold crucial information. In response, the Home Ministry has consistently maintained that no such document was ever received and that all actions taken were strictly in accordance with the Pardons Board's official decision. Now, to clarify the situation and ensure public transparency, Datuk Seri Shamsul Iskandar, Senior Political Secretary to the Prime Minister and also PKR International Bureau Chief, has called for the declassification of the Pardons Board meeting minutes. He believes that making these records public will not only dispel misinformation, but also prevent the issue from being exploited for political gain. Now, Communications Minister Fahmi Fadzil stated that neither he nor the government has ever seen or received such document. Fahmi emphasized that the government is adhering to the legal processes and respects the court's orders, as explained by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim during the Prime Minister's Question Time session in Parliament. Now, Fahmi reiterated that the government is bound by the principle of sub judice, ensuring that no actions prejudice ongoing legal proceedings. He highlighted that any developments regarding the alleged addendum fall under jurisdiction of the Pardons Board, and the government continues to seek legal advice from the Attorney General to navigate this complex issue. Now, this controversy has not only highlighted the sensitive interplay between the legal system, public trust, and the constitutional role of the monarchy in Malaysia. But as the legal battle continues, the focus remains on how these developments will impact public perception and the political landscape moving forward. Now, that's all for today for this episode of Beyond the Headlines. If you like this particular episode, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Don't forget to also turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. Don't forget to also follow us on social media. We're on X, Facebook, as well as TikTok and Instagram. My name is Amalina Kamal, and I'll see you next week.